They decided the HOA could control the inside of our house. After they assaulted me, I took them to court. When the rule first appeared, most people laughed. It was posted in the HOA newsletter, under something called Garage Compliance Standards. According to the new policy, garages were intended strictly for vehicle storage. Not tools, not bikes, not storage bins. Not a workbench, just cars. People assumed it was a typo. Then the fines started. The HOA began sending violation notices with photographs attached. They had been walking the neighborhood every evening, snapping pictures whenever someone's garage door happened to be open. If the photo showed anything other than a car, boxes, lawn equipment, even a bicycle, you got a notice. 75 the first time, 150 the second. People complained at meetings, but the HOA president insisted the rule protected property values. Garages aren't storage units, he said. They're meant for vehicles. I thought it was ridiculous, but I paid the fines when they showed up. We had shelving along one wall of the garage for gardening tools. Every time the door opened long enough for someone to photograph it, another notice arrived. Then the rules changed again. The board announced that anything visible from the street fell under HOA authority. At first, that seemed vague enough to ignore, until people started getting fined for things inside their homes. One neighbor was cited because the association claimed her living room looked cluttered from the sidewalk. Another received a notice about unapproved interior, paint visible through the front window. It escalated quickly. They said that if something could be seen from outside, they could regulate it. People started closing their blinds. That lasted about a week. Then the HOA announced a new compliance requirement: mandatory open blind hours during daylight. Their reasoning was that permanently closed blinds created an unwelcoming aesthetic for the neighborhood. The fines doubled for anyone who kept them closed. I wish I could say we fought back immediately. Most of us didn't. We grumbled. We complained to each other. But the fines were just small enough that people paid them instead of hiring lawyers. I did the same. If they said the blinds had to be open from 9 to 5, I opened them. If they fined me for something in the garage, I paid it. It was easier than fighting. Apparently, compliance only encouraged them, because the next announcement was the one that crossed the line. The HOA declared that interior inspections were now required to ensure community standards were being upheld. Homeowners would need to allow inspection teams to enter their homes. That's when people finally started paying attention. The board claimed the inspections would be brief, just a walkthrough to confirm compliance with visibility rules. Most of us assumed it was bluff, until they showed up at our door. It was a Saturday afternoon. My husband was in the kitchen and I was in the living room when someone knocked. Before I could reach the door, it opened. 3 people walked in like they owned the place. 2 were members of the HOA Compliance Committee. The third was the HOA president himself. "We're here for your inspection," he said. I told them they couldn't just enter our home. He said the bylaws allowed it. I stood in the doorway and told them to leave. Instead, they pushed forward. I tried to block them. One of them shoved me aside. I lost my balance and fell backward, hitting the banister, and then the hardwood floor hard, enough that my head bounced off it. For a moment, the room spun, and all I could hear was a ringing in my ears. My husband saw it happen. He moved faster than I've ever seen him move. He grabbed the HOA president by the arm and dragged him toward the hallway, while physically forcing the other 2 away from me. I heard their voices getting angrier and angrier, but I still couldn't tell what anyone was saying. One of them came over and grabbed me by the arm again and tried to pull me to my feet. My husband ripped him off of me and threw him into the other 2, then placed himself between them and me. I lost consciousness for a while, but when I came to, my husband was holding me. He was covered in blood, but I couldn't tell if it was mine or the HOA enforcer. I asked him where HOA members were, and he said not to worry about it. They were now outside, and he wouldn't let them hurt me anymore. I could hear the HOA on the other side of door, banging on it and demanding that he open the door at once. He ignored them while he checked me over for injuries. The HOA was not happy about it. They called the police. When the officers arrived, the story they heard first was that my husband had assaulted HOA officials during a lawful inspection. They arrested him, watching them put him in the back of the car while I sat on the front steps with an ice pack on my head was one of the angriest moments of my life. But we had an ace in the hole they didn't expect. Cameras. We'd installed discrete cameras a year earlier after a package theft problem in the neighborhood. One covered the living room, one pointed toward the front door. They recorded everything. The knock, the door opening, the three of them walking in without permission, the shove that sent me to the floor. The moment my husband intervened, our lawyer sent the footage to the police department and the district attorney the next morning. The charges against my husband were dropped before the week was over. The detective who called us sounded almost apologetic. "We've reviewed the footage your attorney provided," he said. "It changes the situation quite a bit." That was an understatement. What the video showed wasn't ambiguous. The knock, the door opening before I even reached it, the HOA president stepping inside with two others like they had every right in the world to be there. My attempt to stop them, the shove that sent me backwards. The moment my husband reacted, the video didn't just clear him. It created a whole new set of problems for the HOA. The police reopened the report as an assault, an unlawful entry investigation. The officers who had responded that night came back to take formal statements, this time from us. By then, word had started spreading through the neighborhood. Apparently, we weren't the only ones who had received inspection notices. Several neighbors had gotten letters scheduling walkthroughs. A couple admitted that the HOA had already peeked inside their homes when doors were opened during routine visits. But nobody had pushed back like we had, and nobody else had cameras. The district attorney's office got involved within days. They subpoenaed HOA communications related to the inspection policy. Emails, meeting minutes, enforcement guidelines. The more they read, the worse it looked. The inspection program hadn't just been aggressive, it had been planned. There were internal emails where the HOA president discussed how homeowners might resist, and how entering quickly before people had time to argue would prevent delays. One message even joked about how most people freeze when you walk in confidently. The prosecutors did not find that funny. The HOA president and the two members of the inspection team were formally charged with unlawful entry and assault. The charges were announced at a preliminary hearing that filled the small courtroom with half the neighborhood. I remember sitting behind our attorney while the prosecutor explained the case. "This was not a misunderstanding," she said. "This was an organized attempt by a homeowners association to assert authority over the interior of private residences." The HOA's attorney tried to argue that they believed the bylaws allowed inspections, that they were acting in good faith to enforce community standards. The judge stopped him. "Even if the bylaws said that," he said, "they would not override basic property rights." Then he turned slightly toward the defendants. "And they certainly do not authorize forcing entry into an occupied home." The case moved forward. Depositions were taken. HOA board members were questioned under oath. Several admitted they had concerns about the inspection policy, but went along with it because the president insisted it was enforceable. According to the meeting minutes, the president's response had been simple. "No one's going to challenge us." He turned out to be wrong. The footage of the incident was played during the hearing. The courtroom stayed quiet while it ran. The moment where I fell to the floor seemed to stretch out, longer on screen than it had in real life. The judge watched it twice. Afterward, the defense shifted strategy almost immediately. Instead of arguing legality, they began talking about settlement. Homeowners demanded an emergency meeting. Then they called a special election. By the time the criminal proceedings were nearing resolution, an entirely new board had taken over the association. The new president came to our house personally. He said the previous leadership had overstepped in ways the community never intended, that they were cooperating fully with investigators and wanted to repair the damage as best they could. The civil case was settled quietly a few weeks later. Our lawyer handled the details, and the agreement included compensation for medical expenses, legal fees, and the violation of our property rights. I can't discuss the exact amount. But it meant my husband and I didn't have to worry about the mortgage anymore. The criminal charges resulted in plea agreements for the inspection team and the former HOA president. None of them are allowed to serve on a board again. The new HOA bylaws were rewritten from the ground up. The section about inspections is exactly one sentence now. The association has no authority over the interior of any residence.